pass me my water real quick? Sorry. Just going to take a quick sip.
You can keep that.
Sorry.
We are going to have an ASMR video.
Thank you.
You don't want that?
No, I'm good. I just wanted just a simple refreshment.
Gross.
Welcome to the Friend of Sinners. I'm Andrew, and I got my friend Josh here with me today. We're going to be talking a little bit about Christian counseling, Christian therapy. So our special guest today is Ashleigh Lorenz. So
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, who you are.
All right.
What do you do? All that good stuff.
What do I do? Well, I'm a mom of 3 and I homeschool them. So
Nice.
that is mainly what I do.
Big job.
Big one,
Yeah, it is a big job. But in my rare spare time, I am also a therapist. So I work with kids, teens, adults, do some family work. And
Yeah.
I've been doing something in that field for, the last 15-ish years.
Really?
Really.
And this is what you wanted to pursue ever since, like, you got right out of high school and you just pursued a degree in psychology?
I did,
or?
yeah. I'd say I knew since about middle school that I wanted to do something in the helping field. So yeah, right from high school, got undergraduate degree in psychology, and then I have my master's in social work.
No kidding.
Yeah.
What pushed you into that? Like, I mean, you said since you were young, you just
Yeah.
wanted to help. Is that just like you primarily just want to help, or you just?
Really, it came from just a personal experience with my parents got divorced when I was really young, and they did an incredible job of co-parenting, remaining friends, doing what was best for me. And I watched so many of my friends' parents not do that and do it very opposite, and the damage that it can do. So I really wanted to be able to support families that are walking through that and let them know there is a way to do this in a healthy way and to not damage your kids too much more in the process.
No, that's awesome. I love that. That's wholesome. Like sometimes, like it's like you're just hoping for people not to, I guess because you didn't really go through the bad part, but you had the good. I wouldn't say good, but the better way of that ending.
The best experience, right? Divorce is always not awesome,
Yeah.
but if it's going to happen, there is a way to do it and a way not to do it. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. And so you've done this for 15 years. Have you ever went full time into it, or have you always just been a mom like since you started his career or something?
Yeah, early on before we had kiddos, I wasn't in private practice. I'm in private practice now, but I did a lot of work with kids. So I did some early childhood development before I had kids. Worked with 0 to 3-year-olds, and that was fun.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What kind of counseling or therapy does that? What does that entail from a 0 to
0 to 3. So that's more early childhood development. So it's working with parents. I love education as well. So it's working with parents and supporting them in their kiddos were either delayed in speech or some of it was behavior stuff. And so it's teaching the parents how to, do certain things that are going to support speech or support behavior modification, different things like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're just kind of dig right in.
All right, let's do it.
We're talking about therapy, and so particularly you're more like when you practice, are you always like with doing biblical therapy, or is this like you do your own secular kind? And
so I am part of a practice. Everybody there, we're all believers, but I have quite a few clients that are not Christians.
Oh,
so
that was going to be one of my questions.
Yeah.
later.
So that's going to always be what I assess for in the beginning when I'm looking for, what is your support network? I'm going to ask that, do you have a faith? What does that look like? And if they say yes, I'm going to dig into that and use that because that's without a doubt, makes my job a whole lot easier. And, but I do see people that do not believe in the Lord, and that's a lot harder.
Yeah. Like, is it because you just believe like it's so much easier with the faith, or do you feel like what you learn for like counseling and therapy doesn't really work without Jesus, or like?
I mean, I know there's a place for non-secular therapy. I know that it is effective and it works for people, but we were created to be such holistic beings that to not bring this spiritual aspect into things, I think just leaves a big hole. So yes, secular therapy can help and it can go so far, but I just see there being a big difference when you bring the Lord into it.
That's cool.
As there should be, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
As it should be. So what are some of the limits, or what are some of the things like therapy helps with, or what are some of the things that, like, if someone were to come up and say, hey, I have this issue or that issue, what are some of the things that therapy helps, like depression or PTSD? Is there something it doesn't really treat?
I mean, it helps all over the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going to depend on what therapist you're going to, kind of what their training is in, what their comfort level is. I work a lot with anxiety, depression, OCD, all that kind of stuff. And I know a lot of people that work with PTSD, all of it. Yeah.
So maybe the opposite. Is there anyone you're ever like, yeah, you should not go to therapy?
No, I think everyone should go to therapy.
Everyone should go to therapy.
Yeah. Well, looks at me.
Because let's because like what is therapy? I think I know there can be such a stigma around that and around mental health stuff, and I think the Bible, Proverbs, it's full of like encouraging us to seek wise counsel, and so therapy can be as simple as
got a list of it.
I'm transitioning out of college and I need to know what in the heck I'm doing next, right? It can be something as simple as that, help guide them through that process to I'm so depressed I haven't got out of bed for a year, right? And so I think there's such a spectrum of what it is that you work with when you're talking about therapy, but do I think it could be beneficial to everybody to seek wise counsel? Absolutely.
So with that, going down that path there, everyone should do it. Get wise counsel is what you keep saying. Why should someone go to a licensed therapist or counselor instead of seeking wise counsel and just like, well, my grandpa has lived a lot of life and he's free?
Absolutely. And I definitely a place for that. I think if you are finding that through seeking wise counsel from people in your life, maybe even, some pastoral counseling and maybe some deeper level stuff is coming up. I think, if there's trauma stuff, again, if it's depression that just, it's not lifting at all, then I think it's okay. Let's look at going to someone professionally. But do I think everybody needs to see a therapist? No. But I think, I don't think it can hurt.
Yeah. So it could only really help, because one of the things I was thinking is like, you talk about like there's the stigma, and like often the people who should see therapists are like the ones who are depressed often, or the ones who are like, hey, you look miserable, you need to, get fixed. Right. And so like it often, no one ever comes to therapy because they just want to improve slightly more. Like they're already really good and they're like, oh, I just want to get a little more better.
Yeah.
Is that often what you find? Like it's mostly people with, I have this problem or this issue or that issue?
Yeah. Typically people are coming in and they're in a rough spot. I don't get many people that are like, yeah, life is great, and I just kind of want to shoot the breeze with you. So most people are in like a big transition or struggling through something.
So like you kind of mentioned a little bit about Proverbs. Any kind of verses that come to mind as far as like counseling, or is there anything that you kind of remember off the top of your head?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, Proverbs. I don't remember where in Proverbs, but
it's just because I was looking through it earlier. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Touch the mic.
It's in my book out there.
Yeah, you're good. I was just like looking through some of it earlier, and I'm just like, there's a lot of places that talks about counseling, and I'm more on the side like therapy. Do I need it? But counseling, 100%. Like I'm like, man, we need people who are wiser and smarter than me, and that's about everyone else in this building. So, no, I love like. One of the ones I pulled out was Proverbs 11:14, where there is no counsel, but people fall.
Yes.
But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And that's repeated like 3 more times, and like in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. You know, in Proverbs 15:20, I can't read my own handwriting. I don't know if that's even 22 or 27, and then 24:26, chapter 24, verse 6. So like same kind of theme, just like with a multitude of counselors, with people there to counsel you,
Right.
which is kind of what your profession is called.
Right, yeah, and I in no way think that, in those verses that God is necessarily meaning, well, yes, only a licensed mental health therapist. Absolutely not. We do have, seeking wise counsel can look like your grandpa, your friend, whatever. But I think this can fall in that same space.
What are some of, we're just going to go back just a little bit. What are some of the things therapy shouldn't be used for? Like, does therapy help with phobias? Does it help
Absolutely.
with? Okay, I was curious. I had a couple of things like schizophrenia. Is that something like you just gotta just drug them up and send them off?
Depressing.
Like, how do you what like what are some
Drug them up and send them off.
send them off?
No, I think there are certainly certain mental health challenges that are going to respond better to counseling, and some that typically medication needs to be involved. So schizophrenia being one of them. However, I think it's always beneficial that it is partnered with talk therapy.
So a lot of you've mentioned like depression a bunch. There are a lot of people who say or believe that you don't need to go to counseling, you don't need medication, all that stuff. If you just believe enough in God and pray enough, God's going to just take that from you.
Right.
And so someone that comes to them and be like, man, I really think I need to go to counseling because I've been dealing with depression for years now. And they're just like, well, you just haven't prayed enough. You don't need it. So what do you say to that?
Yeah. Spiritual battles and mental health issues, can they go hand in hand? Absolutely. If depression and anxiety, if that was just a spiritual issue and we haven't prayed enough, then you literally would just need to pray and that would be lifted and it would be gone. Can God do that? Absolutely. Of course he can do that. But I think when we have that mentality, it's really, really dangerous. It does a lot of harm because that's not always the case. Our brains are made of chemicals, and there is data and all kinds of things backing up the fact that when we're dealing with some of these mental health issues, we have a legitimate chemical imbalance in our brain. So it's like saying, well, you've got lupus, you should probably pray harder and just hope it gets better. Don't worry about going to the doctor. I think it's the same idea when we have that attitude about mental health.
So I was just going to kind of incorporate, like, so you're talking about mental health. A lot of it can be traced chemically and stuff like that. And so do you believe things like depression, ADHD, is that like more spiritual? Is that all chemical? Is that a mix? Is that like 20-80%? I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think there is no clear, easy answer to, what is the root of all of this. I think there is a ton of data out there just about how the brain is different in people dealing with some of these things, how environment impacts that. But, I don't think there's a clear, it's 50% this, 50% that.
Okay. Yeah. I was just kind of curious. I know some people, they'll chalk it all up where it's, hey, you just got to pray. Or maybe there's nothing spiritual going on. You just got to work on your mind and straighten that out. And so in your practice, do you feel, and maybe you can incorporate other Christian therapists, do you feel like you guys kind of keep the Bible as secondary, and then your studies, your case studies as more primary sources? Like, do you feel like the Bible is just like a secondary information of source, or I don't know, like? No,
I mean, if I'm seeing somebody who's a believer, absolutely not. I think my goal in working with people is integration of mind, body, spirit. Like, I think that right there is what healthy looks like. And so absolutely, the Bible comes into play in all of that, because it's spiritual disciplines that I think help get us there. And I use a lot of that with people I'm seeing that are believers. The Bible talks over and over again about meditating on God's word. What are we filling our minds with? And so, looking at what are these spiritual disciplines, prayer, solitude, that we can be incorporating into life that is going to support our mental health.
You kind of went over this a little bit. What makes therapy easy? What qualities about a person or characteristics when they come and sit down in front of you makes you go, oh, thank you. This is not going to be one of those tough ones.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there are ones where you're like, oh, no, this one's going to be a year or lifelong process.
Yeah.
You know?
My easiest have been men dealing with a legit, just really acute onset anxiety disorder. Because often men are like, I want to get out of here. I don't want to deal with this. And I don't like what this feels like. So, but honestly, it's just motivation. If somebody is willing to put the work in, I tell people during our first session, like, there's nothing magic when you walk through my door. I am not going to do anything to fix you. I'm going to give you tools and we're going to kind of go on an exploration together of you and patterns and communication and all these things, but that's all I can offer. So it's what you do outside of our time together that makes the biggest difference. So if somebody is really motivated and all in and they do the things I suggest in between sessions, that's going to make it a lot easier.
Okay.
Can you explain like what you mean by like putting in work? Because for the people that are like against counseling and they're like, all right, maybe I should, and then they're like, oh great, now I'm paying you to give me homework.
Right.
What does that look like?
Right. So I think a huge piece of what I do is I help people look at how is your thought process impacting whatever it is that's going on in life for you right now. So if I've got somebody dealing with anxiety, we're going to look at what are you thinking about that scenario, right? Because you and I can look at the exact same situation and it can freak me out and you can be totally fine with it. So it's going to be looking at our thoughts and then challenging our thoughts that aren't helpful. So is that thought helping you get closer to the person you want to be, the person God wants you to be, or is it taking you further away from it? And then we're going to identify new ways to think, new ways to speak to ourselves. Truly rewiring the brain. Like, the brain is the most fascinating thing in the world, that it literally, the reason we get stuck in these behavioral patterns is because they are patterns and they make pathways in our brain. And so it's, somebody that every time something goes wrong, they explode. If they've been doing that for 20 years, it's way harder to, I'm going to stop, I'm going to take some deep breaths, I'm going to walk away. However, with practice, those pathways literally close over and new pathways are put in their place with the healthier behavior. So a very roundabout way to say the homework I'm going to give them is, hey, let's try on this thought this week. Let's see how that impacts how you feel, and come back and tell me, oh my gosh, yeah, I did feel less anxious when I had to go talk to that person or whatever it might be.
So with all those neural pathways that are just grinding into your brain, is anyone ever stuck in it? Like, I've been dealing with anger outbursts for 30 years now, and this is just me now. That's in the acceptance. What would you say to them?
Oh, it is never too late to change. Ever, ever, ever. Like, I don't think anybody is ever stuck. Like I said, I think there are certain mental illnesses that it can be more of a challenge, but I don't think anybody ever has to be stuck being that same person that they are.
That's pretty hopeful.
It's good to hear. Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, if I just sat here and, like, in front of you, you're like, yeah, no, you're gone.
Yeah, you I can't help.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you,
So
like, you're a done case,
in.
but the rest, there is hope for everyone else.
Everybody else.
Yeah, everyone else has got a little more chance or opportunity. Do you find, like, dealing with depression, it's a pretty easy formula, or do you find, like, it's so different every single time? It's so wildly different. How you tackle it or what you talk about is different.
I think the general idea, it's kind of like the basis can be the same, but everybody is so unique that the details of it and how it fleshes out is going to look different with everybody, for sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I figure we're all a little bit different. No, it makes sense. And so maybe I just want to go into this, like, a little more, like, just like a personal experience. What are some of, like, the biggest motivations? Like, what are some of the biggest wins you saw that, like, you're just like, this is what I'm here for. Yeah. This is what, like, keeps me going.
Yeah. I really enjoy working with anxiety and OCD because it can be, it is such a terrifying experience. So to be able to, to just see what a difference educating somebody in the first session of what is actually going on in your brain when we have compulsions, and anxious thoughts, that alone is just so much. People all of a sudden feel like, oh my gosh, this isn't just me. It's like giving them permission to really share what's going on, because a lot of times they're scared. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm insane for having this thought pop into my head. But that's always really inspiring to see that, and then to give them tools that help them be able to actually live life a little bit fuller is awesome.
Anyone you've ever been like, geez, this is like so hard. Like, this is like anyone ever like push you where like, I'm just ready to put in my 2-week notice?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, when you get people with a lot of complex stuff going on, if you've got past trauma and depression and anxiety, and it's a lot. And I think that's why it's so important as therapists to, one, we have to know like what our role is, that we're not there. We can't fix, we can't be the ones that make any difference. Again, we can just offer these tools, and that we're getting support, from those we work with, and that we're being healthy in our lives. But absolutely, there are people that I've got to remind myself that it's not on me, and I'm going to do what I can do.
You do what you do your best in
Yeah,
that situation.
absolutely.
Do you find yourself like you have to constantly keep learning, or do you find that like, okay, you've kind of got a general, now you can just live your life but also teach along the way?
You mean like for me?
Yeah,
I need to
for
keep
yourself.
learning? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I have to keep learning. The stack of books on my nightstand is absolutely absurd. So yes,
kidding.
lots of learning has to continue to happen if you're going to be effective. Are there therapists that they've gone to school and now they just sit in their chair and nod their head? Absolutely. So that's not who I would recommend going to.
Yeah.
You want somebody that's going to give you feedback and talk, and not just say, how'd that make you feel?
And just draw a little sketch.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, do you ever do that? You just sketch something random, like a dumb picture or something? Like
I take notes. I'm really like 105 at heart, so I'm like, nothing is electronic. I write everything. But yeah.
So with the, you mentioned a couple therapists to stay away from. So if someone's going in to choose a counselor or therapist, how do you pick it? Like, there's people that have gone one time and they're like, well, they were just awful,
Sure.
and I'm never doing that again. How do you pick a good one, or know it's a good one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think first of all, knowing what you're going in for and asking your therapist, hey, here's kind of a quick summary of what's going on. Do you have experience in this? So you want to make sure that it's a therapist that feels equipped to assist you with whatever's going on. And then I think at least spending 15, 20 minutes, whether it's on the phone or in person, just you asking the therapist questions. And you really have to see if it's a good fit, how you even feel. Like, what's the, how do you feel in the room together? And I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? And so I think go and feel it out. And you want to make sure that you feel safe. That's the number one goal in therapy. So if you go in and you feel like you're being talked above, if you go in and it feels like the therapist wants to quick fix you, that's not going to be great.
Yeah.
So I think the most important role a therapist has is to sit with and see people in their pain and in the hardest moments of their life. And so if you leave that session and you don't feel like you were just seen and supported, it's probably not a good fit.
So how do you deal with those people who, let's say, they don't really want to be, like, you can, like, so you mentioned, like, some people don't like when therapists are telling them what to do or being told that. How do you feel when you have people who just, like, you're like, I wish I can just slap a little bit of sense, like, like, just like, how do you deal with that? Like, do you try to be very soft, or do you have to sometimes have to just give them a straight up answer? It's like, the reason why you're in this is because of X, you're just, I don't know, like, do you have to be blunt, or do you always have to be like, oh, let me see, just go subtle? Or
I just slap them a little bit, just right across the face. It completely depends on the person. And so I think that's something that I constantly have to be checking myself with of, do I have a feel for, and the more I work with somebody, the more I know, okay, you're somebody that can really handle me being super blunt, or you need me to put on my soft, delicate gloves and share this a little bit in a softer way. But I'm always going to, communicate with my clients in a way that I think is going to best fit them. Absolutely. I've had some come to Jesus talks with clients, but they've been people that I thought could handle it. And, you're paying me to sit here with you.
Yeah. No, I always wonder, because like I hear people who would often go through like multiple therapists, and like I feel like the moment one of them like talks blunt with them, they're just like turn off and move away, and it's like, how do you work with those people? Who just want their feelings affirmed, and like,
oh yes,
like you
that
can't ever you can't ever like tell them anything, because the moment you say like, hey, take some accountability, it's like it's over.
The thing is, sometimes like I might be the only person that this other person is talking to at length in a week, and so sometimes it's just I need a place to just blah and share all these things, and there isn't this huge desire for the homework and doing the work and all these things, and it's just I want you to be somebody that's listening, so that exists too.
Yeah. Do you find that to be also pretty helpful for some people? Like, it's not necessarily to be fixed, but just like they just need a friend, or they just need someone to listen, or
Absolutely. Yeah.
I find like a lot of people don't have anyone to listen to them, so it's like I can kind of understand that part.
Yeah.
I definitely can. So I just want to ask one pretty funny question. I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Just whatever. What do you think? So with the Bible, some people, like, this is going to go to one camp where every mental illness is a demon or whatever, or something like that. Do you ever believe mental illness could be casted out, or do you just think like it's not that simple?
I mean, absolutely. I think the Bible is full of, God casting out demons, and does that still exist? I would say so.
Yeah.
I don't think it's always really simple. So again, I think to just, every single depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, well, that's a demon, and let's just pray harder. I think, again, be wise, seek spiritual counsel, talk to your pastor, but don't think that it couldn't also need the assistance of therapy. Yeah.
Is it okay for like a good, strong Christian to go through depression? Is that like, is something wrong with them if you're like you're reading the Bible constantly, you're in it, and you're just still depressed? Does that mean you're doing it wrong or something?
How was David? Was he doing it wrong? Like, do you think he was a believer?
Is
he a man after God's own heart?
King David, yeah, he's got a lot of depressing ones.
He does, yeah. So you read through all that, and you tell me if it seems he may have had some stuff going on, and does that mean he was still loved the Lord? God does not promise us an easy life at all. He doesn't promise us happiness. He doesn't promise things to be easy. So why on earth would that mean that we're not going to have any struggles when it comes to mental health stuff? I think, again, I just keep linking the two of like, yes, we have cancer. Yes, we have diabetes. Why would, because we're believers, mean that our brains are never glitchy? So yes, 100%. You can love the Lord, and you can be struggling with depression, and you can be struggling with anxiety, 100%.
Okay. Because I feel like in some church circles, it's like, if you're struggling with mental health as a Christian, you're probably a bad one. But I think it's just refreshing to hear. It's like, you're not a bad or failing Christian. It doesn't mean you're not saved because you're, going through some depression or something like that, or ADHD. So I just wanted to kind of clarify and just see what you thought about that.
Yeah, and for any of you lovely listeners out there, that is your thought and kind of the camp you sit in, I would bet that you've never walked beside someone with real mental illness. So that would be my charge for you, is go meet someone who is seriously dealing with depression, anxiety, and don't go there as like a pious, I'm better than you, but really try to be in relationship and community and see if that doesn't change your mind. Because I think we fear what we don't know. And I think when people have that attitude, they've surely never experienced it, or they're in such denial of their emotions that they really need to be in therapy, or they've never walked beside somebody that has dealt with that. So.
Yeah. Like if someone's going through something, like let's just say as a friend, like, you're not a therapist, what are some of the best ways to help like a friend or a person that you're seeing go through hardships? Like if they're not comfortable going with a therapist, they don't want to pay, or they don't have money, or they feel like, you know, the stigma with it. Like, what are some of the practical things I can do with my friend, you know, that, you know, I'd sit across with some coffee. What are some of the things I could do?
Just listen and don't try to fix. I think that's the biggest thing, is people want to be seen. And I think we fear walking through those things with people because we feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say. You know, what do I do? If I bring it up, then they're going to think about it. No, people that are walking through struggles are thinking about it anyway. So just, hey, can I come sit on your couch with you? We don't have to talk. Let me just be there with you. And then when they do start to talk, don't say, yeah, man, I remember when something like that happened to me last year. No. No, just listen.
I do that too often.
Yeah, no. Don't try to pull it back to you. Just listen and say, wow, that stinks. How can I be here for you? And that makes a huge difference.
But I think I like the part that you mentioned, like, don't try to fix them. I feel like that's such a hard lesson, because it's like we often see the problem as like, oh, it's so easy to fix, but it's never like that. And I feel like that also just turns people off from ever talking to you again. Yeah,
especially you guys. You really like to fix stuff.
100%. And I've been learning better to actually ask, like, all right, do you want me to give you a solution?
Yes.
Or
great
do you
question.
want me to shut up?
Yes. Do you need me to listen right now, or can I help you problem solve? Okay.
Because it is so often I'm like, if you just did this, you would be fine. And they're like, I don't want you to fix it right now. Like, why? Why don't you want me to fix it?
I'm trying to help. Just let me help you. Let me fix you.
Yep, and now we're fighting.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to be ending things up. Is there any just last advice you would wish for any of our viewers who are just curious about, you know, going to therapy, or maybe they're just struggling with any kind of the mental illness? We listed PTSD, ADHD, I don't know, had a whole list. Depression, all that stuff.
All kinds of them. Yeah, I think, one, if you're somebody that is fearful to reach out because of whatever you've walked through with a stigma and you don't think that believers should go to therapy or whatever it might be, I just encourage you to put that before the Lord and see if he doesn't soften your thought on that. And again, with seeking wise counsel. So, you know, go talk to somebody that you trust, that is maybe outside that camp of absolutely not, you shouldn't be going to therapy. And if you're listening and you are in that camp of absolutely you shouldn't be going to therapy, like I said before, go be in somebody's life that is struggling and see if that doesn't change your outlook on things.
Yeah, that definitely, the more I hang out with like people who are going through something, like I realize it's such a real thing, and that's why I learned I'll never fix anyone.
Right.
So I definitely agree. I didn't realize I shouldn't be bringing my story in every time. Maybe that wasn't a good part on me, but no, honestly, this has been a cool discussion. It's one that I've looked forward to, just because like I'm on that camp of like I'm a little, I don't know, just a little bit anti-therapy, but it's also like I also know it's always good to have counsel. It's always good to be around someone who's wiser, and at least someone who's got to figure it out. I mean, your main thing is a specialty into this, so I feel like you would be the better one to know how to navigate those kinds of waters. Anything else, Josh? No? All good?
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and so, and in case anyone didn't catch on, she is Chris's wife.
I am.
So it was awesome. I just feel like I wanted to mention that. I don't know if we mentioned that in the beginning or anything, but this has been a fun episode, and thank you guys, and have yourself a wonderful day.